Direct News TV. October 29, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, Gaza internet back as Israel launches next phase. Internet connectivity is being restored to the Gaza Strip after a communications blackout cut the enclave off from the rest of the world. PM Benjamin Netanyahu says the war in Gaza will be long and difficult, with Israel intensifying its aerial strikes and progressing to the next phase of operations. Netanyahu met representatives of families of captives after they threatened to start street protests. Hamas's leader in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, says the group is ready for an immediate prisoner swap with Israel. At least 7,703 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7. More than 1,400 people were killed in the Hamas attack on Israel. People in Gaza immediately reaching out to families as limited services return. People in Gaza are immediately trying to communicate with their families after waking up to find out that some telecommunications services have returned, Al Jazeera's Safwat Khallout is reporting from the besieged enclave. Khallout described the last 24 hours as being the hardest in the last 3 weeks, as people in Gaza were unable to communicate with their families immediately after Israeli air attacks as they have become used to doing. As one of the few people with an international eSIM card, Khallout said he had been helping many people check up on their families during the blackout. I have been getting many calls and many messages from people living outside asking me to go and check if their family, their relatives, are still alive, he said. Large pro-Palestine rally in Australia. Thousands of people are gathering in support of Palestinians at a protest in Melbourne, Australia, according to organizers. Nasser Mashni, president of the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network, APN, shared a video on social media showing people holding Palestinian flags outside the State Library in the center of the city. Sharon Grock, a journalist with newspaper The Age, also said there was a huge crowd in Melbourne. UN Security Council meeting scheduled for Monday. A UN Security Council meeting called by the United Arab Emirates has now been officially scheduled for Monday afternoon after 3 p.m. New York time, 1900 hours Greenwich Mean Time. Al Jazeera Arabic's Rami Ayari says the council will discuss the situation in Gaza after previously scheduled meetings on Western Sahara and Colombia. The UAE requested the meeting on Saturday after Israel's expanded ground operations in Gaza. To date, the UN Security Council has failed to reach an agreement on 4 different resolutions calling for a ceasefire, or shorter humanitarian pause, since the current escalation of violence began this month. Palestinians reach loved ones in Gaza as internet coming back. Majid Abusalama, a PhD candidate in the Palestine Research Group at Tampere University and opinion columnist at Al Jazeera, said he was able to reach his mother in Gaza and hear her voice. Everyone can reach their families now. No one knows for how long, he wrote on social media. Watch, incendiary bombs rain down on Gaza. Video obtained by Al Jazeera appears to show the use of incendiary munitions during Israel's heavy bombardment of the Gaza Strip. On October 12, Human Rights Watch accused Israel of using white phosphorus munitions in its military operations in Gaza and Lebanon, saying the use of such weapons put civilians at risk of serious and long-term injury. Israel denied the accusation. White phosphorus is considered an incendiary weapon under Protocol 3 of the Convention on the Prohibition of Use of Certain Conventional Weapons. The protocol prohibits using incendiary weapons against military targets located among civilians, although Israel has not signed it and is therefore not bound by it. NetBlocks confirms Gaza internet connectivity restored. The Internet Observatory says that internet connectivity is being restored in the Gaza Strip, according to real-time data. As we reported earlier, Palestinian media outlets said telephone and internet communications were returning gradually to Gaza. Journalists and social media users said they were able to connect to the internet using Wi-Fi. Netanyahu says Israel more united than ever. But is its government really united? In his speech announcing the second phase of Israel's Gaza offensive, Netanyahu said the country was more united than ever. But Israeli media reports over the past several days hint at divisions within the Israeli premier's administration. Israel's defense and army leaders have been clamoring to launch a full-scale ground invasion, but Netanyahu has faced pressure, largely from the US, to take a more incremental approach and buy time to try to secure the release of captives held in Gaza. As Al Jazeera's senior analyst Marwan Bishara wrote, the tension between Netanyahu and the other two leading generals in the war cabinet, Benny Gantz and Yoav Gallant, is widening this division and creating confusion over the much-anticipated land invasion. The rift is driven by personal, military, political and ideological disagreements that emerged well before the war started, and are likely to shape the Israeli polity well after it ends. Telecommunications gradually returning in Gaza, reports. We're getting reports that telecommunications are gradually being restored in the Gaza Strip. Several Palestinian media outlets are reporting the resumption of telephone and internet services. Phone networks and the internet were largely cut off on Friday as Israel announced an expansion of its military offensive on Gaza. Hard to count how many Israeli raids taking place in occupied West Bank. Overnight, Israel has been raiding several Palestinian cities. It's becoming hard to count how many raids are being conducted as we speak now. We're talking about raids across the occupied West Bank. There are also armed confrontations in Jenin. For the past 24 hours or more, Palestinians have been gathering in Jenin, in the city center, saying that they're going to stay there to voice their anger about what's happening in the besieged Gaza Strip. When they heard Israeli forces coming in, they moved away into the mosque, but there's still confrontations going on and there are still injured people that are being evacuated from the mosque towards the medical centers. Saudi Defense Minister to visit U.S. Capitol on Monday, report. Khalid bin Salman will visit Washington, D.C. on Monday for talks with senior U.S. officials, the Axios news website is reporting. The long-planned visit, which has not been publicly confirmed by the U.S., comes amid fears the Israel-Hamas war could spill over to other parts of the Middle East. Elderly man reassures family of his safety during Gaza press conference. Our cameras captured earlier a heart-stirring scene during a news conference by Ashraf al-Qudra, the spokesperson for Gaza's health ministry. An elderly man appeared behind the live TV press briefing and began gesturing in what seemed to be an attempt to reassure people who know him that he was well amid Gaza's telecommunications blackout. Israeli forces storm Jenin, confrontations erupt. We're getting reports that Israeli forces have launched a raid in Jenin, the latest such overnight operation in the occupied West Bank since the war erupted. Witnesses told Palestinian news agency Wafa that confrontations erupted after Israeli forces stormed several neighborhoods of the city. We're monitoring the situation and will bring you more as soon as we get it. Second U.S. aircraft carrier moved into Mediterranean. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier and its strike group has moved through the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group is already in the eastern Mediterranean, part of a buildup of U.S. forces as the country supports Israel. The Eisenhower is slated to move through the Suez Canal to the U.S. Central Command region. The expansion of U.S. forces in the Middle East also comes amid a series of attacks against U.S. personnel on bases in the region. As we reported earlier this week, the Pentagon confirmed that the U.S. attacked two facilities in Syria that it said were used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iran-backed groups. U.S. President Joe Biden has said he will not hesitate to take further action should more potential attacks on U.S. forces be carried out. Turkey responds after Israel pulls diplomats. Turkey has responded after Israel's foreign affairs minister said he was withdrawing diplomats and planning a re-evaluation of the relationship between the two countries on Saturday. The Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that Israel cannot even tolerate criticism and condemnation, even as it commits a crime against humanity in front of the whole world. The ministry also responded to accusations of anti-Semitism against President Recep Tayyip Erdogan by Israeli officials, describing them as baseless and stressing that Turkey being a safe haven for Jewish people. Israel's ambassador to the UN earlier said that Erdogan remains an anti-Semite, according to reports from Israel's army radio. On Saturday, Erdogan addressed hundreds of thousands of people at a pro-Palestinian rally in Istanbul. Protests demanding ceasefire continue around the world. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in big cities across the globe for another day to demand an end to Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip. In the U.S. city of San Francisco, the local branch of the activist group Jewish Voice for Peace said more than 15,000 people blocked a highway to demand an end to the genocide in Gaza. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.